Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we have Scott Roeder, the crime scene reconstruction expert, as well as the host of the podcast Crime Scene Time Machine, which you could find on Spotify. And he also has a YouTube channel as well. And today he actually had a new episode about Luigi Mangione. And Scott Roeder is, and also what's interesting right now is the fact that he just recently completed an interview. I believe it was a 2-hour long interview, Scott, if I'm not mistaken, with the History Channel for an upcoming episode of Ancient Aliens, where they're going to discuss the Las Vegas alien incident. So, how did that go, Scott? How did that interview on the History Channel with the History Channel go?
Well, I tell you what, thank you, Jim. Great to be back. And hello, everybody out there to ET Reality Nation. I love you. I tell you what, Jim, some of the smartest people in the world listen to your show. And that's for a reason, because they're interested in the truth. And as far as how the History Channel went, I felt like it went really good. These people, I want a big shout out to Marianne Wagner out there, who was one that reached out to me from Prometheus production company, who does the filming for Ancient Aliens at the History Channel. Their level of interest in this case is very genuine. They believe that this case is legitimate. And they were very interested, and I think came at it with a very unique perspective on telling this story. And I was really happy to be a part of it. Like I said, they took it very seriously. They asked some terrific questions. We did talk for about 2 hours. It's going to be part of an episode, season 18, episode 1, called Aliens in Our Midst, which this is going to be a feature for that episode, and from what I told in Act 1. So I think it'll be some great exposure for this case and all of the hard work that not only you and I have done, but Chris and Matt and Jonathan, all the people, Gray Howell, all the people from the ET reality community out there, Julia, that have made this truly a grassroots effort to bring to the forward consciousness an event that actually happened, that has been proven to be real, authenticated, and we're continuing to evaluate it as we go to find even more evidence of one of the most inexplicable things that I've ever seen captured on film.
Yeah, I think, what's interesting to me is the fact that this is going to be seen by millions of people across the world. Ancient Aliens is a very popular show. And so a lot of people who are completely unaware of this case are going to become aware of it. And I'm hoping that it causes them to look deeper into this case too. I mean, I don't know how much you could fit into this segment of this episode, because there's a lot to this case. And as we've talked about a number of times, it warrants, in fact, it warrants a lot more investigation. And that's still not over with. I mean, just talking with Chris Lathrop the other day, who's someone who is part of this team, this grassroots team that's trying to get this information out to the world. It's something where that video needs even further examination, and by more experts too. More people, I think, need to become interested in this and start examining this video, because there's a lot of weird things going on there. I mean, we've been able to identify aliens in that video. However, I think that there's more to it. I think it seems like when you give it a break for a little bit and you give it fresh eyes, then you see more things.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, early on in this case, people were saying, "Oh, I see something here, I see something there," and I couldn't really see it. And I think initially, at least for the first 6 months or so, we were focused in on 1, 2, maybe 3 individual beings, right? But then as we became even more confident of those being in the same physical reality, and everything just locking perfect together from a sequential standpoint, we even had, it's over, but it's over from the standpoint that it's real. But the fact that we're still 14 months later, or whatever it's been, still finding new moments inside of that minute 42 that continue to beg for more analysis. And I don't think that we've found everything that needs to be found on this case. So, it's just a case that keeps on giving. And I think we need to keep ringing that bell until the world recognizes that there's a difference between an organic kind of evaluation of an extraterrestrial event and something that's heavily curated for your viewing. And I think that people get lost when they see something that's curated for them, packaged for them, promoted for them, and weirdly enough, throughout all platforms. When a story gets curated for you, it's being curated because you're hearing that same story through a number of different duplicating machines all over the platform. Excuse my dog barking, but and this has not been curated. Matter of fact, we've had a fight and claw for every bit of eyeballs on this case, and we continue to do so. And I think the History Channel is a good step toward getting the message out. But I have to tell everybody out there, and this might be kind of new news. It was certainly disappointing news to me when I found out, but the History Channel was not able to license the cell phone footage from Contra, the mother, on this case. And as a result of that, this appearance on the History Channel is going to be without using that cell phone footage. So that'll put I think a little bit of the handcuffs on this case, really making the big splash that it does. But everybody knows out there that footage is out there. We have it on your page, on my page, Crime Scene Time Machine. We've done a number of different episodes about it. It's on my YouTube channel. It's on my Twitter page. It's on Jim's YouTube channel, his Twitter page, as well as Surviving the Survivor and the UAP podcast and all kinds of places. This video has gotten millions and millions and millions of views. It still, to this day, is undisputed as being authentic. Matter of fact, we now have several peer reviews in our back pocket of people in similarly technical qualified positions that agree that it is authentic. We have had no credible challenges to its authenticity. And matter of fact, we've had no credible challenges as to what's actually even being seen in the video footage. We get some snide comments off the mark by John Greenwald or Mick West saying it's a shadow or it's a puppet or it's a raccoon or a coyote or, we don't know what a pixel is or whatever the hell that they're trying to say. But to me, I think that's just somebody who's afraid to talk about the facts. And they're reverting to a remedial, grade school critique that's been debunked since day one. Matter of fact, Jim, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the very first time we went national on this story was on News Nation. Yes. And Ben Hansen said to me, it could be a shadow. And I explained to Ben right there on News Nation, you guys can go look it up, put a link in the show notes or whatever you want to do, but it's there. But he says, it might be a shadow. And I said, no, it's impossible, Ben Hansen, that it could be a shadow because you need a light source, you need an object, and you need a surface. And there's no way I can imagine that there could be a surface floating above the fence that could create that face. So correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. Am I oversimplifying things, or has the people like Mick West and the other people in the debunker community, are they just so desperate that they just go back to their original argument that has always been debunked from the beginning?
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me, because there's really nothing new. Like, in fact, I did a couple of shows. Been talking about John Greenwald's reaction to this. He accused me of coloring in. Now, there was a couple images where I did color it in the show where the creature is, but he was responding to the original picture saying I did something to it, which I did nothing to it except for brighten it. And he, right. He recognized that it looked like an alien because it is one, right? Yeah. And that was hard. That little creature that we've been talking about, the backbreaker, that was hard. That we were not seeing that at first. That took time. I mean, even when I first saw it, I was like, what the hell am I looking at there? There's something moving. And then I realized what I'm looking at. And it's hard to even, it took me a little bit to understand and to come to terms with, oh my God, this is something. This looks like a little gray. It took me a while to even say that. Like, even people like us, like when you first, I want to point out something. When you first contacted me in late March about this, and that you
Yeah.
were able to prove that obviously there was something in the video and there was things that were happening. Like for about a week, I felt really strange about this because I always knew because of my personal experiences that this was real. But when you're presented with absolute proof that comes from some other source, we've never really had that before.
No.
And I was troubled by it for a week. Like I had trouble myself. It gave me the chills. Like I had goosebumps from it because it was frightening in a way. And I think maybe we might be getting that a little bit from people within the UFO community itself. I mean, could be John Greenwald just suffering from cognitive dissonance. It's too much. They can't believe it. Like they can't believe that this evidence is real because they've been trying to pound on the hammer for so long, trying to get more evidence. And then finally, when something's shown to them, oh no, I don't believe that. You're crazy and this is stupid. And I got so many bad comments. And of course, from Mick West too, like he's saying, I don't understand pixels and things like that. Like, what's going on here? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think people have a hard time processing predictive programming that's in their consciousness. I mean, come on, I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up with movies like Close Encounters of the Third Time, and even before then, when I was a real little kid, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then we have all the Mars Attacks and Independence Day and all of the different kind of movies that Hollywood has programmed us into kind of telling us, well, this is what aliens look like, right? This is what they do. This is what they look like. From, this goes back all the way to the beginning of cinema. Aliens and sci-fi has been a huge part of putting into our collective consciousness what these things would look like if they were real. And then now we see the images coming out of this authentic video, and some of them kind of look like what our mind tells us they should look like. And that's uncomfortable for people to accept that, well, maybe it's not a coincidence that the real beings look like what we think they might look like because we've seen it somewhere before. And, so it brings up a whole new kind of subject matter and esoteric symbolism and all that stuff of, whether or not these movies were made decades and decades ago foreshadowing these events, or is it just a coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. I think that, there might be something to that, but, who's to tell?
Well, actually, when you do look at some of them old movies, I mean, the creatures in them don't look like exactly like these things. I mean, these things, the
No.
grays that came in, that didn't start coming into the, like, if you look at the 50s, I mean, they looked, I mean, like there was a movie called It Came from Outer Space. There was a big monster. It was shown in 3D with one big eyeball it had, or
Okay.
a crawling eye. There was a bunch of little like these.
Okay.
Looked like
Yeah, like the blob and things like that,
like all
right?
those things. Yeah, there was nothing. There was
Yeah,
another
yeah,
one
yeah.
called the Invasion of the Saucer Men, where there was these little green men with big heads. That was probably the closest thing that
Yeah.
we dreamed up before the reality of the situation was.
I mean, like starting in the 80s, you have E.T., right?
Right.
And those movies where they kind of look like, little friendly kind of beings. And
Well, Close Encounters, like you mentioned, Close Encounters of the Third Kind before. By that point, Spielberg was actually working with J. Allen Hynek that he tried to make those creatures look like what was being reported. That was probably the first time that anyone out there saw the closest facsimile to these creatures. I mean, and there was a TV movie made a couple of years before about the Betty and Barney Hill incident called the UFO incident that was on TV that showed these big-headed, big-eyed kind of beings. But that's when people started hearing these kinds of stories and seeing it with their own eyes in movies. But the ones in the 50s were somewhat close, but not completely.
And then of course Whitley Strieber, and I mean that kind of put right into the front lobe consciousness of the whole entire world, what these things look like. And then you have the X-Files and all. But anyway, I guess the point is, should we be surprised that reality is going to somewhat reflect nonfiction? Or, is there a line between the two of one kind of begets the other, or so on and so forth? I mean, these are bigger issues of, I think, like Whitley Strieber said when I was on his show on a different case, he thinks movies and books and stories about ET are a way that the ETs use. This is not me. This is not my opinion. This is Whitley Strieber's opinion. That the ETs use to soften the day when we actually come face to face. That if we saw them face to face without the decades of movies and stories, that when we see them, we would just pass out and die because they vibrate at too different of a frequency than we are. So, like I said, not my opinion, but Whitley Strieber says it's the aliens' way of a soft disclosure to get people ready for that. So, I mean, who's to say? But the simple fact of the matter is, I didn't draw these creatures. I didn't create these creatures. You didn't create. Nobody put these images in this video.
Yeah.
These images came with the video. And I urge anybody out there, go find the original video. It's out there. We have it on our channels and so forth. This has been an open source investigation from the beginning where, we're doing hard work, but we pointed you in the direction where the stuff is. You can go find it yourself. Matter of fact, I was looking the other day. I was finding new things the other day, things that people told me from the beginning were there. And I was just like, I can't see it. It's too far of a stretch. It's just too much. I'm focusing on the guy over the fence, and that's because I can see, I can feel, I can almost taste that one. Whereas the other ones are just so deep in the shadows that you really need to focus your aperture on them to, figure out what you're seeing, and then it kind of, you can kind of start seeing it.
It's not what we expected, is it? It's not what any of us expected.
I was talking to my daughter, who has zero interest in UFOs. The other day we were talking about it, and I was showing her some new images, and she's like, "That one looks like Grimace." Or the Hamburglar, or the Yip Yips from the Muppet Show. And we started laughing about it because, I was thinking to myself, maybe this is like the ETs having a sense of humor, and not a lot of people talk about that. But if, just hypothetically speaking, because it's a Friday, we're having a little fun with the conversation. Just hypothetically speaking, if the ETs are smarter than us, and they probably are on some level, at least technologically, wouldn't you think that they have some kind of a personality that includes a sense of humor? And if they do have a sense of humor, what would it be? Would it be sticking in one of them in this video that looks ridiculous so that nobody will believe that it's real? I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was like kind of an interesting thing to think about from a psychological standpoint.
Well, it's funny, one of the things that I thought, I know I did a show on this actually. I put up the idea that maybe this was a way, that maybe I know this is probably a stretch, but I'll say it anyway because we really don't know, right? We don't know what caused that thing to land, but maybe it was all done on purpose by them. Maybe this is their way of revealing themselves because once you look at that, I mean, it wasn't like the video was right in your face. It wasn't like you see ET walking around and it's all this detail. No, it took time to figure out. I mean, and that tells me, well, maybe this was on purpose. Maybe, I mean, the only way to prove it to anybody would be to do it this way, because then if it's so difficult to recognize the creatures that are in there, and it takes work, like all these, how long it's been out there, almost 2 years now this happened. And we didn't, it took you almost a year to make that your analysis, right, to make that determination. Maybe it was all done on purpose, and this is how they wanted to do it. Maybe this was the aliens' way of disclosing themselves, because I mean, wouldn't it be more unbelievable if all of a sudden the video showed up with an alien standing there right in front of a bunch of people, and it's clear as day, and they're speaking somehow, and you just hear a voice in your head? That might be too much, or like an echoey voice, right? No, the way this is done, it's like, okay, here we are, and look we can't do anything. You can't. It's going to take you a lot of time to figure out that we really were here, and now that you figured it out, you have to take the next step. But a lot of people are still having problems taking that next step.
Well, I think you're right. I think maybe what they're, it's hard to get into the mind of, an ET, but, Avi Loeb, when I was talking to him, he's like, he thinks that the space artifacts and the different things is like the aliens' intelligence test. Like, are you smart enough to find us? And maybe, but I think maybe it's a personality test and a desire test. Do you really want to see us? And are you cool enough to see it? I mean, I don't know. Or it could be a trap, you know. Like my daughter and I were joking again yesterday. Like, what if we do all this work and we make contact with these aliens, all for them to be like the Mars attack alien? And we're like, there goes Congress, right? You know, it's because I think there's a couple of different approaches, and we can joke about it, you know, a little bit because I think what can we do except think about it in our terms, and if they're good, well, then we're not risking anything. It's fine. We'll have good contact. But if they're bad, are they going to show themselves as being bad, or are they going to come as like a Trojan horse? So maybe these things like these ET craft could be Trojan horses to get inside of our secret components to spring their trap, or maybe they are Trojan horses for us to think like we're in charge and we can shoot them down and then they got us. Or maybe they are gifts. Maybe they are Easter eggs to give us technology so that we can evolve technologically. And maybe things like this with this videotape and this encounter with this family, maybe this is a personality test or a desire test. Do you really want to see that we're here? Well, then you need to do the work and go through the process and, not, get the credibility for it and all this stuff. And then you find it. Whereas these other cases that are curated and brought to you by Christopher Mellon, and then nobody combats whether or not why are these brought to us by these special interests of the military industrial complex, and then you have the other side of it where people kind of already have this vision. Well, they're here to help us and they're here to raise our vibration, and the mothership is gonna make everything right and stop all. That's probably not true. Just like they're probably not all here to take us over. It's got to be in that gray area somewhere in between. And I think that's where you and I lay down on this case is, we got to take these things on a case by case basis and don't paint everything with the same brush.
What's interesting too is like I think about there's been things that happen over the years that I thought was undeniable. Like for instance, the Ariel school incident, which I talk about a lot on here. I mean, there's over 60 kids. I mean, to me, that's an intelligence test. Like, how could anybody absorb all of that information and walk away thinking, oh, they must have just had a mass hallucination or something? That's not what happened here. Those people, those little kids all encountered something, and it was either NHI or extraterrestrial, whatever it is. We really can't say, but they did have some experience with something very strange. But yet there's people who don't believe it. And some people like the magic puppet show that was presented, stuff like that.
There was somebody actually said it might have been a puppet show. Are you
imagine? That's crazy.
Somebody actually said that. Like, we came up with that as a gag, early on. Well, it could be a magic.
No. Actually, what happened was there was a guy that from England, from the UK, that came up with that theory, and then Mick West promoted it, and then I was laughing. I was laughing about it because it was so absurd.
Yeah.
And this was before the Vegas case.
Okay.
But we had that, but that's not enough. Okay, now how about this? But I'm not seeing anything. Like, it's all, what are you putting blinders on your eyes? Like, how come all these other people are seeing the aliens, but you're not? Like, these people, to me, right? Either they're lying, right, or something, or they have an agenda, or there's some kind of a block in their brain that's preventing them from seeing this reality, from seeing the images.
It could just be plain ego too. Some people that are well established in the ufology community, the UFO community, they are very resistant of opening up the conversation to different people who may have different perspectives on what's real and what's not real. And they kind of maybe see themselves as doorkeepers for what they deem to be real with their little Midas touch or whatever. Whereas I don't feel like most people accept that there is anything like a UFO expert, because how could anybody just claim that they have this ability to be an expert on all things anomalous from another universe or whatever? Just the sheer fact of what it is makes you just, another person observing the phenomenon. And for people to put themselves out as the foremost authority on the phenomenon, I feel is a bit ego centric and probably says more about them as a person than it does about their knowledge about the subject.
How long have you been doing the Crime Scene Time Machine podcast now, Scott?
Actually, this is episode number 93, and this has been 3 years now. I started the podcast in I think January of 2020 during the pandemic, when the whole work at home thing started. And frankly, Jim, it started off with me wanting to talk about the John F. Kennedy assassination, and then who would have known? 93 episodes later, I'm hip deep in aliens.
Right. Okay. Now, before, and this is a question I'm getting at. Before, okay, you were doing this podcast for a little while, and then
Yeah.
you just came across one of my videos at some point in 2023, or it was, I guess, in early June,
Yeah.
and then you contacted me, and that's how that's when, and then you did that initial analysis where you're able to identify the creature that chased them out of the yard. Now, before that, before you were listening to that podcast, what was your feeling before this case? Did you believe in this phenomenon? Okay, yeah. Well, I was saying we had to cut a little bit out of there, folks, because Scott's dog started barking because somebody was coming in the door. But what I was saying was you did this crime scene. You were doing this crime scene time machine for a little while before you contacted me in 2023 about this Vegas alien thing. Then you did the you made that initial analysis where you're able to discover the creature that chased them out of the yard. You were able to identify that, and then. My question were you thinking about this subject before, because you were spending your life doing these investigations into crime scenes?
Not really. I mean, the only time I really even thought about the ET phenomenon was just casually as I watched movies and science fiction and things like that. But it was never really in my conscious as like, this is something that's actually real. I mean, I kind of knew that there was a possibility and I wasn't dismissive of it, but I certainly had a lot of room to either just not pay attention to it or just be like, yeah, 50-50 was kind of my thing. But I think the thing that really grabbed my attention was two things. One, it was listening to your show, because I kind of stumbled upon your show after, listening to all my true crime stuff and making my own true crime shows. And I really liked your style on the ET phenomenon. And then you came across this case. I think originally I heard about this case from you. And then I contacted you because I was like, well, I'm a video analysis expert. Why don't I take my skills as a video expert in what I do for a living and see if I can't find something in that video. And I think the other thing about the case that really intrigued me was the public outpour calling this family liars and hoaxsters. To me, I thought was downright slanderous. And, listen, I'm always one to fight for the little guy. And, as it turns out, I think we were able to fully restore their character because I think it's undisputed now that nobody can call this family liars or hoaxsters.
No.
What they said they saw, and we have proof of it to the point where we could prove it in the court of law.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people have trouble accepting that fact, but I'm going to tell you right now, folks, I guarantee if this case ever went to some sort of a trial for any reason, any sort of hearing in a court, I could tell you right now that the jury would find that after it was all said and done, that this really did happen. I guarantee it. I guarantee that.
Well, we have, I think, really unique evidence in this case in that I've talked to Angel on a couple of occasions. We have public statements from Angel, extensive on this case. We have the video that was downloaded just right after it was uploaded. We have police reports. We have video from Ring cameras. We have odd things falling out of the sky that in and of themselves constitute a UFO phenomenon. And then when you combine all of these uninterested people together, it really is absolute proof.
Yeah, I mean,
and I guarantee it.
We both. I mean, you guaranteed it. Initially when we did that first show, but I mean, it's even right now. There's even more evidence now. There's more stuff that we found, and it's just guaranteed. There's no way it could have been a hoax. We know that. That's people stopped. They were talking about that. That stopped. I mean, remember, even Ben Hansen, like he couldn't even say that anymore. Like, when he was on News Nation with you, he ended up saying, "Oh, they just thought they were seeing it because their adrenaline was up because something came falling out of the sky." That was about that, and that's ridiculous too. I mean,
there he's half admitting that something fell out of the sky, right? I've seen shooting stars before. It never made me magically see aliens in my backyard. And I think the thing that's interesting, when you go back and listen to that 911 call, we actually have the father on tape and Angel. He said they felt an energy.
Yes.
In that backyard, he felt an impact of that thing hitting the ground. And then the father, I don't know if the father felt the impact, but the father felt an energy, a weird force field, he said, to some degree, when he's back there. So it's more about it's even more than about what you saw. It's about how it made these people feel. Even the police officer, who was clearly shook after he was investigating this case and he was leaving, to the point where he said to Angel and the family, if those 9-foot beings come back, don't call us, handle it yourself. And think about that. These are serious people, right? These Las Vegas PD, I've worked with them on cases before, on homicide cases. These guys investigate murder cases all the time. This isn't a suburban police department that's rescuing cats out of trees. Okay. This is a big city metro police department of hundreds of police officers who do detail on celebrities, political figures, billionaires and millionaires, airport escorts. They respond to armed crisis, bank robberies, rapes, homicides, all kinds of situations. These are serious police officers that are hardened. Okay. And for them to go into this family's backyard and be so shook that they're like, no, you deal with this yourself. I mean, that says something right there. So there's a tangible kind of feeling that comes along with this case if you take the time and effort to look at it. But guys like, the debunkers that we've been talking about, and the passerbys that just snipe. I just equate those guys throwing an apple out the window and not even paying attention, right? They're just, trolls. They don't matter. But the people that hold themselves out as experts or journalists or debunkers or critics or whatever, disclosure people, whatever the case may be, newsworthy people, for them to make a comment on this case in the negative only, to me, says they haven't done any work, and they can only make that snide remark if they haven't looked at it. And to not look at it at this point is tantamount to malpractice.
Yeah.
If you're putting yourself out there as an expert in the field.
Yeah, if you're serious in this business, that's something I was pointing out. Anyone who, I know I said this in the past week. If you're someone who's serious about this, then this is all you ever could have wanted. I mean, this is it, but yet it's being suppressed for some reason, and I don't know why. Yeah. I think I do know why. Somebody actually commented the other day saying the reason no one's talking about this is because it's blanking real. Somebody said something to that effect. I was like, that's perfectly true. That's what it is.
Let me give you an example of how suppressed this is. My most listened to podcast on Crime Scene Time Machine, with tens of thousands of individual listens, is the murder of Jeffrey Epstein while in custody. Okay, I think it's something like 3,000 or 10, or whatever. It's a bigger number.
Right.
The episodes that I've done on this case, 50, 75 listens, views. So you tell me, is this case being suppressed? Why is it that when I put out, like, for example, just today, I put out an episode about Luigi Mangione, who killed the United Healthcare worker and has become an anti-supervillain to some and a terrorist to others. Now hopefully that's going to get a lot of views. and a lot of listens. But I want to compare the kind of listens I get on that to, something that I do on this case. And is the algorithm against us, or are there people out there saying, no, shut them down, shut them down? I don't know.
I don't know either. Like I actually, John Greenwald made a statement to me on Twitter about this recently, that if this was real, then you would have had a lot more hits on your show. Well,
Would I?
I don't know. And here's the other thing, though. I have to admit, I'm not good at this SEO stuff. In fact, I pretty much don't do a lot to advertise myself, which is my own fault. It's my own issue. I just try to concentrate on the content that I'm coming up with, and I don't really worry about these other things. I keep getting emails from all these different companies saying, "Hey, you want to do this to get your show more traction?" I mean, maybe I'm doing something wrong, and that's the reason why it's taking so long for everything to grow here. But I don't think that has. It could be being that it's being suppressed, or it could be just that you and I'm sure you're in the same boat as I am. You're not doing anything with that SEO stuff.
No,
I don't know. I just can't. I'm not a good businessman when it comes to those kind of things. I probably need to start figuring that out. But that could be part of it too. I don't really know. And I think the other thing is too, there's just so many different people out there talking about aliens. That, okay, we're just a one little grain of sand in the sea of podcasts out there talking about this. So a lot of people, they'll hear other people talking about stuff. A lot of people talk about things without absolutely any proof whatsoever, but yet they still have giant followings.
Right.
But we're talking about absolute proof. But then again, if you're just a passer, someone who's passing through different podcasts, and you come across this one, they think, oh, these people are just nuts. They think they know what they're talking about. Maybe that's what they walk away with. But the problem is that we're not nuts, and we actually have that absolute proof, and we're extremely supremely confident that if it went to court, the jury would find in favor of alien presence in this world. No doubt in my mind.
I think it's just a matter of time before the cream rises to the top. And I think that the kind of reporting that you do here on this channel and the kind of things that I do over on my station, I think they come from the heart. They come from personal experience, and we bring our own personal integrity into telling these stories, or retelling situations, or giving insights or expert opinions, or just covering subjects that we care about. Because I'm confident there's enough people out there in this gray zone that know the difference, that most things aren't black and white. Most things are that space in between, and that space in between is bigger than the two end zones. You know what I mean? Because in the world that we live in, we got the red team versus the blue team, but all that space in between, that's where we are, right? That's the gray tribe. That's the people that just call it like we see it. And listen, we don't get a win whether you like us, like this guy or that guy, right? Like, this is not political. This is not pro this team or that team. This is what it is. It's our perspective on what we think this is and what it means to us based on our experience. And, take it for what it's worth. And I think people should, take it as a breath of fresh air, considering the kind of muck they have to deal with the curated content that gets shoved down their throat. And, by the time they get done with all that stuff, maybe they're tired of the issue.
It could be. And so with now on your show, how many episodes on Crime Scene Time Machine have you done on the Vegas case? Would you think over the past?
Oh, geez, I bet you at least a dozen, at least 12.
So I would imagine then, I mean, you're saying you're not getting that many views on it, but when this History Channel episode airs, are they going to mention that you operate the Crime Scene Time Machine podcast?
No, that's part of their policy, is they don't do any promotions for people's shows or podcasts or anything like that. So when they had they asked me what I wanted my tagline to be under my name when I'm talking. And I just said, well, if I can't mention the podcast, just put, Scott Roeder, crime scene expert, evidence room. And so that's what we agreed on. I got 3 lines. But they said it couldn't have anything to do with promoting a podcast. I
would imagine, though, that even with that said, that doesn't really matter. I mean, I think it would help if they did. But even if they're not, there's still going to be people are going to find you now when that episode airs. They're going to find your channel, and then they'll see some of the episodes, and maybe they'll search. There's a lot of other channels too. I mean, there was some great episodes like by that one big YouTuber Sherman who did
Yeah.
a show like, and then there's Chaos Moogle. That guy did some episodes. There's different podcasts that have talked.
You know, what I love is that Casper Light. Yeah, that
Casper
guy.
Light. Yeah, he talks.
Yeah, he does a real good show. And matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going back on Sean Hazlitt's show, an hour, a darkly colored glass. What is it? A dark glass hour, which is a great podcast. Hold on, what's the name of his show? I don't want to misquote it because it's actually a really great show.
Plus, you're on a Stephen Diner show or Stephen Diener.
Stephen Diener, yeah, it's Through a Glass Darkly.
Okay, I heard of that.
I'm going to be on Sean Hazlitt's show tomorrow, and then Stephen Diener and the UAP 850 podcast, and of course, how can we forget Surviving the Survivor?
You're both on there.
Joe Waterman. I mean, that had millions of views, and I'd say 90% of the people in the true crime community, they appreciate the level of evidence that we're bringing to the case, and they're not baffled at the starkness of the reality of the conclusion. They're more engaged with the way that we found it. Yeah.
And there's some other things that you're looking at. Just today, you've been really busy lately, but I've been talking to you about this South Carolina 2022 case with the tree shaking. I'll just let it play in the background while we're talking about this. You just start looking at that today, and
just today. All right, so I saw this video originally when it came out, and I thought it was really interesting, but without an original copy, it was hard to really evaluate it. And then you sent me the MP4, which was pretty high quality. And as I was breaking it down today, I definitely can identify some kind of a being, in the tree that actually is throwing down a stick. And then in that one segment, we can actually see this bizarre distortion going throughout the entire treetops. And it's just, I don't know what to think of it other than that I need to do a lot more work on trying to track down what's moving in between the trees. And hopefully we can get there. What is this going to be? I don't know. Is this a case of a cryptid animal? Is this a case of escaped chimpanzees? Is this Bigfoot's cousin? I don't know, man, but it certainly is. There's something in those trees snapping those things, and we can see this bizarre movement. It's just hard to, I guess the challenge is holding back conclusion until you're fully done with the evaluation. But there's something weird going on, and I think that will be a subject that we can talk about more extensively later after I do a complete analysis. But I think it's going to take a few weeks for me to break down all that footage. It's pretty good quality film, and there's a lot to find.
Well, I thought was weird too is that at one point in the video, a whole giant chunk of the tree just comes crashing down. So to me, it doesn't seem like there was wind. Like there's a couple of things I've eliminated already, like wind. I've seen, at the onset of a big storm, for instance, you'll see the tree shaking, but you don't even hear any wind in the guy's cell phone.
No, the leaves aren't moving.
And then some people pointed out like a rotting tree, but a rotting tree wouldn't shake like that. That's not going to happen. So something is there.
Something with the tree shaking it, but you hear the snapping of these branches. Those got to be pretty big branches to make that big of a snap.
Yeah.
What we should do is I should talk to
right there. Look at that. A big giant chunk of the tree just falls down.
I should talk to a friend of mine who's he owns a tree trimming service. And I bet you if I showed him this video, you can see something moving there.
Right. Look at this. Look at how violently it shakes.
Move that whole tree like that.
The only thing I can think of is there's invisible wires, but I looked at this. I don't see any wires anywhere, and somebody would have had been standing off screen there pulling on them, and I don't see that. And that's why I thought, this is something definitely that you might be interested in.
That wouldn't explain the stuff falling from the top of the trees.
No.
But I think what would be interesting for me to do is to go get a friend of mine who's a tree trimmer. He spends his life in trees, cutting them down. So he would know, he knows the sound of branches snapping and how big of a branch that is. And then based on this video, he can tell us how tall these trees are, what kind of a tree is it, what kind of a force you would have to do to shake a tree like that. What the width of these trees are. And I think that will give us an idea of what could be in there. I see something lit up in the back, almost in the background over here. There was I don't know if there was like a fire or something, but like I said, I
Well,
think
he's
this.
shining he's shining one of those
Okay.
really bright flashlights,
Yeah.
Dorothy. And that's what I think that is.
Is
I
this
like to
is this a commercial for a high powered flashlight?
I'd actually like to talk to this guy who filmed this actually too, because it's
Can we
almost
get a
3
hold
years.
of him?
I couldn't figure out how to get a hold of this guy yet. I don't even know what his full name is, but
Well, let's
he
put that
sounded
out
like
there.
legitimate. Yeah, we need to get this
Excuse me,
guy.
gentlemen from South Carolina who took this video. Could you contact me or Jim? We'd love to interview you about the show and maybe do a live stream and look at those trees as they sit now. Because if we had an address and we could talk to this guy, I think that'd be real interesting. I have a lot
Yeah.
of friends in that area too.
I really like your idea about contacting the tree trimmer guy,
Yeah,
because that's something they might have an answer to this. Maybe, I mean,
yeah.
maybe he has an answer of what's happening here. Now there was some reports like at
Like
first when
you
this,
see that been thrown right down.
yeah,
That's
like
a
something's
big
there.
branch from high up, 100 feet up.
Now, apparently, there was now, from what I understand, in just this year, there was when this video was becoming popular, people thought it was filmed in 2024, actually last year,
Uh-huh.
and some people were pointing out that there was an escape of some rhesus monkeys that they might be responsible, but but this actually
They're tiny little monkeys. Yeah.
this video was filmed in 2022. So, but then I found out that there might have been another escape in 2022. But I don't, like, some other guy on YouTube pointed out that there's no way these little rhesus monkeys could cause that kind of a violent shaking of the tree. They're just too small, and they wouldn't be
How
able to.
big is a
But I
Reese's?
don't know. I think that needs to be, something that needs to be
I'll tell you right
clarified.
now how big a Reese's monkey is.
Yeah, they're not
How
that
big
big.
is a Reese's monkey? Let's see
A
what
rhesus
Siri says.
monkey.
Yeah.
Like, to
No,
cause
no,
that sort of a violent, but you don't even see them. You don't see anything. I can't see. I mean, I went through the video for like a couple of days when I first was somebody pointed it out to me, and I can't see anything here. I looked through it over and over and over again. I don't see anything except for that one strange part where you see it looked like the one, like I did I'll leave a link for that episode where and I pointed it out to you, where it looks like some sort of
yeah.
3 dots or something, and I don't even, like,
Okay.
something was moving.
This is a Reese's monkey. You probably can't see that, but yeah, Reese's monkey looks like they're about maybe, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah,
Uh, they're like the kind of monkeys you see on TikTok all the time, trying to give them an apple, and they're like
yeah.
very expression. Yeah, they're not big. How many Reese's monkey? How big was the Reese's monkey? I find it hard to believe that like a 10 to 20 pound monkey could make this kind of damage, because this is a pretty
And not
big.
only that, Scott, but those monkeys, when they're active like that, they're making noises themselves. That was
Right?
another thing I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
to point out. So there's no noise here. There's no, like, animal noises, like there's nothing
Right.
like that. So
Yeah, not screaming and howling. It's just some weird. It gives me definitely the Terminator or the what do
Predator.
you call it, the Predator vibes. But it's hard to tell. I mean, in that one piece that you slowed down, it looked like there was some really large, bizarre, invisible thing floating through the tree. But it's too early, I think, to come to any conclusions. I'd say let me work on this thing for a couple of weeks, see if I can't find some, more data to pin down. Maybe I'll do a consult with the tree expert, see what he says, and then we'll do some further research on, well, how big can a Reese's monkey get? And let's start ruling some things in and ruling some things out. But I think it's a worthwhile case for investigation. Is this case going to get to a 100% proven phenomenon like the Vegas alien case? I doubt it, but I think it's an interesting case to cover.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I'd like to have an explanation for this one, because I don't have one right now, and I don't think the guy who filmed it has one, and I don't think anybody really has a legitimate explanation for this at this point in time. This is a true mystery to me. This just shaking tree, unless it was some kind of a hoax somehow. And I don't know. I don't think it was. When you listen to that guy talking, it doesn't sound like that, but you just never know. You never know. I don't think it is, though. My first blush.
it doesn't seem to be the temperature of hoaxes.
No.
Like hoaxes are the people walking up to people at a grocery store and having a fart noise, and like those seem to be the popular hoaxes in the world today. But to do an elaborate wire brush, risking your life to shake a tree 80 feet up as a hoax, that seems pretty dangerous of a hoax with very little reward or payoff. So, you
Yeah.
know, one thing just to close on this, I was asked by the History Channel, I think a very interesting question that I hadn't been asked before, and it was, "What makes you believe Angel was telling the truth?" And I said, or I think she said it, "What makes you think Angel isn't lying?" Right. And I said, well, from a crime scene reconstruction standpoint, from say a law enforcement perspective, when you have a victim of any situation call in and saying, I'm being victimized, somebody's on my property, I'm being attacked, I'm being robbed, whatever the case may be, your obligation is to investigate it to one, protect the person, and you assume they're telling you the truth until you have evidence to say that they're not. So, from a law enforcement perspective, I think you must give the benefit of the doubt of the victim, and in this case, the family, or anybody who feels like they're being victimized. You have to give them the benefit. You must give the victim the benefit of the doubt, and then it's on you to prove that it's like a misunderstanding or that it's a hoax or that they're lying. We can't assume people are lying. I think most time people are so cynical that just because they see something that they can't understand, they immediately go to whether it's a lying, it's a hoax, it's this, it's that. I think that's just the wrong perspective. I think, to be fair to people in our community, we need to give people the benefit of the doubt that they're being honest and genuine. And then if the facts turn out that they're not, well, then I don't think we need to hold back on that criticism. But to just come out the gate and just assume somebody's lying and shift that burden, I think is unfair. And I'm not going to be a party to things like that.
And I would say this, early on, I like all those people, like you said, there was a lot of people saying hoax, 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 but I just wasn't seeing that. Like there
I
was
mean,
nothing there that was screaming to me that this is a hoax. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We went through this a dozen times before. It's not a hoax, folks. It's
no.
definitely not a hoax. That's guaranteed as
You
well. I
see
mean,
the
they have the proof. They have everything they need to back up the whole story, and that story itself should inform the whole world. We're not alone, people. We're not alone. This proves it. I don't see
Yeah.
that part's not. It's just not penetrating a lot of people's minds like it should have been. But then again, is
Also,
it?
I need to correct the record. News Nation actually made a mistake on this story. By previously, they said they did an article recently where they said that this case has been found by the Las Vegas Police Department to be unfounded. That's not true. This case was found to be a valid call, and it is unsolved. So this case is not an active investigation as far as we know, because I don't think the police department know what they need to investigate here further, but that's in their jurisdiction. But this case was not proven to be false. This case was not debunked. This was not deemed a phony phone call. This was deemed a legitimate call, and this was deemed a legitimate investigation. And you can clearly see from the reaction of the police officers, they were affected by it and they were scared too. So anybody to say that this was an unfounded call is straight out lying, and we need to correct the record when these debunkers try to filter in these little untruths to try to make this case go away, because it's not going away. It is real, and we still have something big left on the counter. My father passed away, so I wasn't able to go meet the FBI for the presentation, but that is still on my agenda, and we're going to be getting that done hopefully in the month of February. But it's still something that's ahead of us. That's just an update I wanted to give everybody out there. I've been receiving all kinds of condolences and thanks, and I appreciate everybody for your thoughts and prayers for my family, and we appreciate it. But just to let everybody know, we are still going to be presenting it to the FBI. We had to delay it for a little bit because of a family circumstance, like I mentioned, but that's still something we're going to do in the future.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that, Scott, about your father passing away recently. That's terrible. I went through that before in my life, and it's not a fun time. I could say that. Yeah.
Yeah. But we got good family around us, and I'm very grateful for the time that I got to spend with my dad, especially these last 6 months has been a gift. And I love my pops more than I ever have.
Yeah. Well, I want to say this. I want to say, thank you very much for coming on the show today and talking about all these things. And I guess one other thing before we go, I just want to say, what's your opinion on these debunkers? I mean, like Mick West. Why did they say? Why are they so? Why are they so opposed to this? I mean, why? I mean, why are they lying? I guess. I mean, I saw a comment the other day, and it just seemed like an outright lie to me. I mean, it's an untruth. Let me just pull this comment up here quick.
Sure.
Let's see
I'm
here.
gonna take a sip of my Arizona, brought to you by Arizona sweet tea.
Yeah, I just want to show you something here. And this was a comment from Mick West on Twitter. And I thought it was on, I just think it's such a lie. And um, he said he made a statement. He says he made a statement about me not understanding pixels, but then later on, and I responded. But then later on, he says I understand pixels. That does not mean I have some moral obligation to talk to everyone about them. The Vegas backyard alien is stupid nonsense. It's just the shadow. That's it. The end. Any more is a waste of time. So, in your estimation, why would somebody act so? I mean, obviously phony here. I mean, to me, this is I don't even know how to describe that comment. I mean, to me, it's an outright, it's totally false. He's saying it's nonsense when it's the biggest story of all time. Like, why is this guy doing this? What's your thoughts on that?
Ego. Dismissiveness. He thinks he's better than you. He thinks he's better than all these people that think the story is interesting. It could just be the simple fact that he's so used to being dismissive of people and not getting hit back that he feels comfortable just throwing insults out there. But I'll tell you what is a big tell is I offered Mick West $5,000 of my own personal money if he would take on a review of this case and debunk me, and he flat out denied. So ever since then, I don't call him Mick West. I call him M West, like the chicken sandwich at McDonald's, because he's got about as much meat on his bones as that chicken sandwich, because he's not willing to put any skin in the game to challenge our findings, my findings. He doesn't want my money. Apparently, he's doing just fine. And I think that's the way it is. People that are happy with the status quo, they don't want anything to change. They don't want any new developments. They don't want any magical thinking, And that was one thing that I hit hard on Mick West, because he was talking about how Avi Loeb was on Ashton Forbes' podcast, and he said, "Oh, this is just sad magical thinking." Avi Loeb lost all credibility in one conversation. And my response to Mick West about that is, there's nothing sad about magical thinking. Albert Einstein said, the greatest gift a human has is their imagination, because you need to imagine something before it becomes true, before it becomes real. There was a day when people said, "Oh, if you think humans could ever fly, you're crazy. You're just sad, magical thinkers." And then one day, these two guys flew. It wasn't so sad and magical anymore. It was reality. So I think there's a fine line between, and I think, what's sad? It must be sad living in this limited universe inside of a box around your reality where everything's already been explained. Everything already fits into a perfect drawer. That must be sad. That must be sad.
To me, I think the thing that bothers me about it the most is that this guy is misinforming the public, and there's people that believe him. They trust him, and they don't realize that this guy is misinforming them. I mean, there's times where he puts out stuff, and I agree with it. Like he'll show, like, oh, this is not a drone, this was a plane flying over, and here's the evidence. Okay, you're right, right.
I
And
agree with some of those
I have
stuff
no
too.
problem agreeing when somebody presents something that's correct. I have no problem, and I'll admit it. Okay, but this guy does not give an inch. I mean, it's disinformation. I don't know why he's pushing this false narrative on the public, or if he's part of something. Him and some others, right? Are they part of some other effort to keep this suppressed? I guess that's the thing I don't know. Some people think that he's actually being paid for this to do this on purpose. I don't know what it is, or it just maybe it's fear or whatever. But he's garnered a large following, and he's misinforming these people, and he's making to me. I the other day I stated that I believe that these UFO debunkers, they're what how did I put it? I think that they're parasites that feed on ignorance, and then they just make it worse, and that's how I see it.
Well, you know, the original role of the critic it is to be that safeguard between bullshit and real stuff, right? And there was a place for those people that were legitimate cynics, right? Legitimate critics that came to the subject not with cynicism or having an agenda to fill, but were able to differentiate between real and fake. And I feel like you and I are more critics than he is, because he's just a debunker where he spends his life just, you know, trying to pick low-hanging fruit. Whereas, you know, we're not worried about the low-hanging fruit, you know. It's not about, it's like Arrow. You know, they'll be like, oh, there were 90% of the cases were able to identify, and it was weather or this or that or whatever. Yeah, we don't care about the 10% you couldn't, right? That's the story. The story is what couldn't you not explain. And this falls under, this case, what we've been doing falls directly under what you could not explain with your terrestrial standpoint of the world as the conventional consensus knows it. And this case makes people uncomfortable because it forces you to step out of your comfort zone and look at the evidence as it sits without a personality saying, you don't listen, you don't have to trust me. You could do the work yourself and find out it's true, right? Like, that's why I think we're different on this, because we're not gatekeepers of the knowledge. It's out there. We gave it for you. We're just telling you what we found. You can go find it too. And that's what we're here to do, is to be part of that grassroots movement to empower people to make up your own mind. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Mick West. Listen to yourself. And if you think that there's some truth in what we're saying, you can do it for yourself.
I always say to people, they need to look at that video with their own editing programs and go through it like with a fine-tooth comb, like we've been doing, and you'll find things yourself without any assistance from anybody else. You'll
Right.
make these discoveries yourself, and I think that's where what people need to start doing if they want to know the truth. Or maybe some people just don't want to know the truth. They just want to keep, like you said before, they just want to keep everything as is. They don't want new major changes, and it is a major change. But unfortunately, the reality is that it is real, no matter what anybody says, right? No matter what, it doesn't matter. It's real. It's guaranteed real. We're not alone. There's something here. And like you said, last April, the next question is who are they? Why are they here? And what do they want? That's the three biggest questions we should be asking now. But 10 months later, we're still debating with people. We're still trying to get the word out. We're still pushing it. You said this was going to happen, though. You said it's probably going to take a while, and it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would.
But I think the levee is starting to break.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I want to say, Scott, I really appreciate you coming on the show again today, and I want everyone out there to, don't forget that Scott has Crime Scene Time Machine podcast on Spotify as well as on YouTube. Don't forget to go to his channel and subscribe. And we need to get the word out there, like promote his channel, promote some of the videos if you can. If you want to put them on social media, it's the videos that he has done on this Vegas case. I mean, everybody, if you want to get the word out there, we need to start pushing this stuff as like a grassroots effort. I mean, because Scott and we're not. I know I'm not. I know that you're not either. I'm not worried about this SEO stuff. I don't concern.
No.
I'm just focused on getting a show out there, and whoever finds it finds it, whoever doesn't, and that's just how I am. Probably not a good policy, but that's just the way things are. I'm more about the content, and I'm not I'm not trying to, I just want to get the word out, and the only way to do it is, I think, for more people to check out stuff like you're doing, like what I'm doing. So don't forget to please subscribe to Scott's Crime Scene Time Machine podcast on Spotify as well as on YouTube.
Thank you.
All right. I want to say this. Thank you all for joining us today. Until next time.